start, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me. I am an artist, and I came to Photoshop actually from fine art. So I'm still a painter, and I paint a lot with Photoshop, but I realized nobody, maybe not nobody, but people are not going to like jump and buy my artwork, and I can support myself. So I decided to do digital, and I started working with Photoshop 28 years ago when Photoshop first started, and I was lucky enough to get the first one from the people who just made Photoshop. They gave some artists to try. They said, can you try that? Can you play a little bit with this? And then I liked it, and I never thought it's going to become part of the dictionary here. Everybody is photoshopping. Is it a big software to crack? Yes, it is. It's huge. What does it mean? You can do that much and be happy, and you can do that much and be happy or not happy. So Photoshop is like the software that continues to give or learn. There's not even a day that I feel like I cannot grab another technique from somebody and say, well, I can do that. I even gonna see you doing stuff and say, oh, that's a great idea, I didn't think about it. Everybody has their own little things about Photoshop. But one of the main thing about Photoshop is to work with it the correct way. And what does it mean to work the correct way with Photoshop? You want to work non-destructively. What does it mean? If I have, let's say, an image that I'm using in Photoshop, let's say this is an image that, okay, it's not found because I deleted it, but let's say I have an image like this, right? And then I want to go in and isolate it and do anything to it. If I'm going to go like to something like the eraser tool and start erasing, that will be good if I'm going to use it just one time. Let's say this is how I want my image to look. It was okay if I wanted to put happy birthday next to it, print it, and then we're going to go back to it. But if you work in advertising or in agency or communication, and this is something that you start to do even for promotion, you can't do stuff like this. Because if somebody said to you, can you bring the other green balloon back? You'll say, well, I just erased it and saved it with the same name. And that's when it doesn't work. So everything has to be with layers, and everything, if you don't do layers, you want to duplicate it so you can go back to the original. So I always say, don't destruct the pixels, don't erase them. Can you erase sometime? Of course. If you don't need it forever, you will erase. Does that make sense? So the goal of this class is to show you how to work in Photoshop and do something with it. Maybe a small postcard, maybe an advertisement for the web, maybe a social media, maybe a very simple collage that we're going to put one thing on top of each other and we'll say, this is good, and let's put type on it, and we'll be happy. So before that, how many people used Photoshop before? Okay. So do you know like the what do you know about Photoshop, like when you used it?
I used it back in middle school, so it's been a long time. There's layers, different tools, cropping, image resolution.
So you used like layers and things like this? Did you use selections?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you?
Me or?
Yeah, any of you.
I took a photojournalism class once, and they used Photoshop mainly to teach us how to edit photo and to make it look more believable and to crop out all the unnecessary things in order to make it look
okay. So we're going to look at a few things like this, and then if we have time, we're just going to go in. How many people never used Photoshop before? So if you never touched Photoshop, the first thing we're just going to do is look a little bit at the interface, because if you used it in middle school or maybe a long time ago, it's changing while I'm talking. Because it's a creative cloud, they change it the whole time. They change the way it looks, they change the way things are there. You'll see a lot of little things there that won't recognize it right away. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically, do you see when I open Photoshop, that's one thing that changed completely, is your screen looks more or less like mine. Now with all these images. Why do I have all these images? Because this is my work, and this is stuff that I did in Photoshop the last few days. That are the recent files. So if I don't really want to see them, I can go to File and say Recent and say Clear the recent link. By default, I think you can have 20. depending, you decide. You can have 2000 if you want. You don't want to have so many recent files. All these takes memory. So every now and then I'm just going to go in, and you see now it looks nice and clean. I don't really need it. So if I go to file, and I don't have the recent anymore. So this is the original welcome screen. You also have an ability to go to your Creative Cloud files. You see the files that I have here, they're actually not on my computer. They are in the cloud. So I send them over because some of them I actually work on the iPad with it and then send it over here to work with Photoshop. So they are my Creative Cloud file, and now you have an option to go to your Lightroom photos, and it might look, because I do have Lightroom, and see these are my Lightroom photos, but we're not going to look into it. Another thing you have the area that says Learn. How many of you have that? So that's when you ask me, that's little tutorials that are really cool. They're 5, 6, 7 minutes. They're going to tell you stuff how to do, but it's very, very, very basic. Can you follow it and start doing it? Yes. What I like in that is that every time you open Photoshop, it changes every few weeks. So they're going to give you different tutorial, and then you go to the Adobe Creative Cloud site for Photoshop, and there's another 20 of them. So they're going to teach you more and more. So I want to open something. If you have my file, I'm going to tell you what to open, and if not, open any other image that you have, at least to see that. So I'm going to go to File and Open, and I'm going to go into my PS Seminar Files and Handout, and then in the Files and Handout, you see I do have some stuff here. I did like a PDF to show you how to do certain things, so it's kind of good, even not now. If you want to download it later, you can see stuff that we're going to do like step by step, and you can go back to it and do that. And then I have like shortcuts and how the toolbox looks and all kind of stuff like that. But then I have some training assets. And the first thing I'm going to open here is just the interface. And then just to look very fast to see how it looks, I want to open 2 images together. If you don't have these 2 images, you can open any other 2 images that you have. Anything. Does that make sense? These are JPEGs. And I'm just going to click and open. And why do I want to open them right now? Because I want to show you how to have 2 images one next to each other, or 3 images one next to each other, and just show you what's going on with your interface on the screen. Does that make sense? So I have 2 images here. You see I have BLAF 3 and BLAF 2. There's going to be a situation in Photoshop that you're going to need to take things from one place to another, or copy part and paste, and you might want to see them together. So that's why we're looking at it. All the way up on the window menu bar, you have thing that says Arrange. Do you see that? In the Arrange, you can tile all vertically. What does it mean all? If you have 20 images, it's going to tile it. You're barely going to see anything, but it will. Then it will tile it horizontally. Then it's going to tile it based on the amount of files that you have. So you have 2 open, and you go 2 up vertically, you can see them one next to each other. And then you can have few things. One way, let's say I needed to take that for an advertisement and do something with it. So I am going to probably go in and look at the 2 of them and say, which one I like better? Because they ask me to do something with water. So I open the last 2 that send me, and I say, well, I need to put some type on it, and I need to show the water. Maybe I'll take this one. It's kind of more engaging. I have the sky, I have the water, I have the cloud, and I have a little bit of grass. But maybe I'm going to need to put 2 images, one on top of each other, and do something. So then going to be a different kind of layout already. Does that make sense? So do you guys have 2 images one next to each other? So if I wanted to do one and both of them are the same resolution, what does it mean? Because we're going to open something else that's not. That's what the most important thing in Photoshop, before even you start. It's a resolution dependent software. What does it mean? if one have like amount of pixels per the image. Let's say both of them have the same physical size right now. So if I'm going to look at this one right now, and then I'm going to go to image and image size, it's going to tell me that it is 2448 pixels by 3264 pixels, and it tells me 22 megabyte. It's a big file. So I'm not going to change anything, but now I'm going to go to this one, and yes.
Sorry, mine doesn't have the same width and stuff.
And you have my images?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have the
Not
pixels?
the one from the first one. Yeah, it says width is 34 and the height is 45.
Okay, so what you have is you have the inches. So if you change that to inches over here and inches here, it's 34 by 45.
Yeah,
but really what we're going with the dimension of the pixels that we have. So this is a huge file, right? We're not even going to worry about doing a lot of stuff with it, but that's important. So if I want to copy one and put it on the other one, you kind of want to try to have them the same amount of pixels. Why is that? Because if it is going to be different, the image is going to look different. They're going to be smaller or bigger, and they're not going to work. So you want to be with the same amount of pixels for your images. That's rule number one. Now I don't want to see the two of them together anymore. I can go to Window, Arrange, and consolidate all tabs. Do you see that? So they go back to normal. So I can have 1 and 2. How many can I open? As many as I want. Does that make sense? I'm going to leave this one open because we might go back to it. And I want you to go to File and Open. And then you have another one. And this one is really important. Even if you don't have this kind of files, I want you to at least watch the screen, because these guys represent what I just said. In image size and resolution, I have two images. Both of them has the same physical size. What does it mean? You work in a place, they wanted you to create a postcard for an event, because most of you are doing communication and marketing, right? And PR and things like this. They said to you, okay, we're going to do an event about Lake Palace, whatever. This is images from India. And I want you to grab images, because the postcard is going to be 6x4. But I didn't say the resolution. Where is it going? If it's going to the web, it's going to be 72 dpi or ppi, pixel per inch, or 150. But if you're going to need to print it, we might need it to have 300 ppi. It has to be high res. I gave you the instruction, I gave the wrong instruction. I told you find something 6x4. So you found images, like you said, inches, right? 6x4. I'm going to open these two. And you can see I called it different. The first one I called it Lake Palace High Res, because this is a high res file, 300 ppi. And the truth is, if this is what you take from this class, you already know half of Photoshop, because if this is not correct, things are not going to look good in Photoshop. Photoshop does magic, but not all the way. What does it mean? It has to be good images. If the image is not good to start with, because people think, oh, I'm going to take something for the web, it's going to be like 72 ppi, it's going to be 3x4 inches, and then I'm going to make from it a huge poster. Guess how it's going to look? Pixelated and not good. So this one is a high-res photo. If you go to image and image size, you can see here if the dimension is 1800 pixel by 1200, and if I change the width and the height to inches, you can see it's 6x4. Do you see the resolution? It's 300. So like I gave you the instruction, I said bring me 6x4. Didn't say anything, right? So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm going to go to image and image size, and look at it. It is 6x4. Look at the amount of pixels. It's only 432 pixels by 288. And it's 72 resolution. So what do you think is going to happen if I take this image and I'm going to try to do a collage now?
Wouldn't it be grainy? Because
it's not, this one's not going to be grainy. It's going to be grainy, you're right, if I'm going to try to enlarge it. It's actually going to be this size, even though it's 6x4. Let's check it out together. Go to the Select All menu bar. Do you see a marquee around it? Do Edit and Copy. You probably remember that, right? Select All is been there forever. Selecting the entire image or partial image in Photoshop. Nothing happens in Photoshop without selections. This is how it is. You select the area and do. So now I selected it and copied. I'm going to do Edit and Copy. Of course, you'll recognize the shortcuts, which is Command C or Control C, generic shortcuts like everybody knows already. And then I'm going to the high res. And then I'm going to do Edit and Paste. See what happened? Both of them were 6x4. Why is it happening? Because this tiny image trying to compensate for the pixel that it doesn't have. So all of them become very small, and this one is actually high res right now. But it's tiny because it went to an area from low res to high res. If this is the way I wanted to do this image, let's say look at this one here, and then I have tiny little images, I'm good. But if this image has to be bigger, that's when you're stuck. If you go into, you're already on the image, go to Edit and Free Transform. Do you see a bounding box around it? If you hold on the Shift key, you start enlarging it, you're going to start seeing some pixelation. And you were right when you said it's going to be grainy. Why? Because it's trying to build the pixels that are not there. Not good. Basically, from low res to high res, it's not very good. You can do it a little bit, nobody's going to fail, and maybe put a filter on it and people are going to think it's okay. But if I'm going to have to print it later for a real postcard, it's going to look pixelated. And the printer is going to call you and say, something is wrong with your image, it looks grainy. Not even grainy, it looks like with pixels and everything. If I click OK, you can see already that I'm losing some stuff there. So it doesn't really look good when you do that. If you did the opposite, it's okay. Going from high res to low res, that's fine. The image is going to be smaller, and you can make it even smaller and smaller, and that's okay. So that's kind of like the rule that you want to remember in the beginning. When you start gathering files to do like a project, you want to make sure more or less they have the same amount of pixels, or unless if they don't need to be the same size, you know how to manipulate it and work with it. Because not all the time they're going to have to be the same size. So we're going to look at different areas that some of them need to be little. So that's fine. So if you're looking for images to do something, that's okay too. Does that make sense? Another thing is, when you're using Photoshop files, you have to be really careful. These are my images. So I own the rights for it. Let's say you needed to do something kind of like it. How do you get images? Either you shoot it yourself, or you go to Adobe Stock to download, but that you have to pay money for it. Or you find places that have free, but you have to be very careful. Like there's a place that you call, I think, Pixabay, that there is a lot of images that are really free, but really free. When you check them out, they tell you we are free, we have no other connect. You can use it for whenever you want for education. They don't tell you what to use it for, but they're gonna say do not use it for advertisement, do not use it for like the film industry. So there's little all kind of stuff. You have to take that in consideration, because if they say if some of you using this image tomorrow for a movie poster and you don't own that, you are subject to a lawsuit. Does that make sense? So the copyright has to be there. So what am I doing lately with Photoshop? I'm using my own images, and sometimes they're not the best. I don't really care, but I go around with my camera and I do simple images with my iPhone, better images with my regular camera, and try to use that as much as I can, even for jobs, and tell the client my images unless you want to pay for it. Does that make sense? So this is the image size and resolution. Let's look now at cropping images. I'm going to leave this one on purpose here too, but I want you to open two images for cropping. File and open, and go to my training assets, and there's a place called crop and straighten. Do you see that? How many people that came here now don't have these files? Do you have the files? Okay, if you don't have the files and you want to use them, these are the files. They're on my Dropbox. If not, you can try using any of your images too, basically. But this is the link for Dropbox if you want to use some of these images, and that would include also a PDF with a tutorial on it. So I'm going to go in and open the crop and straighten, and there is a reason I called it crop and straighten. I'm going to select the two of them and open. So some of you who used Photoshop years ago, this is a change. You'll see a big change now. Look at the first image. This is this is not my image, by the way. I grabbed it from somewhere, so I'm not using it only for education, right? Because who knows? I have to check out who made it or something. I think it's actually was an Adobe sample file that they give you when you do some training, and tell people don't use it anywhere because nobody needs to see it. Anyway, do you see it's not the best picture either? What do you have here? The horizon line doesn't look maybe good. I want to crop it. What is crop as opposed to image size? What do you think?
It's an image size, just making it bigger or smaller. The crop thing is taking something out of it.
Yeah, exactly. So image size, you can make it smaller or bigger, and you have to be careful. Crop, I tell people you're using scissors. You basically, I would just change even the symbol of the crop in Photoshop and put scissors there, because you're basically like in a paper cutting the edges around. You got to be very careful with crop. Why? It will crop everything. You cannot have a layered file in Photoshop, and that's why I wanted to leave the other one and say, oh, I just want to crop the top layer. It's not. You know, what is it cropping? The entire thing. What does it mean? If you want to take partial of the image and not have everything, that's selection. You're going to select it, isolate, make a layer, and trash the other one and not have it. But cropping is like a layered cake. You will just take the top layer to the bottom layer and basically cut it. Let's look at the crop tool. If you're not used to Photoshop, all the way to the left, you have a toolbox. Do you guys see that? There is a crop tool. It's this one here. And you see, I even have a demo now how it works. If you click on the letter C, you are on the crop tool. It's kind of annoying now when you click on it. You can turn it off in your preferences. You have little videos for every tool, which is good for the beginning. After a while, when you start working, you kind of don't want to see it anymore. But look at the crop tool. As soon as I click on it, look what happened. Do you see a marquee around it? It's about to crop. Let's look at it first. Do you see all the way up here? That's your option bar. This is your best friend in Photoshop, because every tool that you click on, the option bar is going to tell you how the tool behaves, more or less. So you always want to have the option bar open. Could be one time that all of a sudden you are not going to see your option bar. Like, I'm going to turn it off, but on purpose. You open your Photoshop and it doesn't have it. Go to Window and bring it back. By mistake, somebody probably wanted to turn it off. I'm turning it on again. Every time I click on a different tool, by the way, you see the option is, do you see it changing? It will tell you something different. So look at the crop tool. The crop says to you, in the beginning, it wants to crop it based on the aspect ratio. Exactly. There's other cropping inside that you can decide. You can even crop it to square. Let's say I want to take that and make it for like Instagram. So look what I have here. I have a square aspect ratio. Now, what happened if I clicked OK?
Then it will just cut the whole thing.
It cuts the whole thing. Do you see all the way up here? It says something, delete cropped pixel. And you see it checked by default. Say OK, click enter or return, or click OK. What happens here? If I saved it with the same name, I'm changing it to, sending it to my client and say, I did what you wanted, and he'll tell you, oh, that's not the area that I wanted to crop. I wanted to do a square from the other side. Can you do it? And guess what? You cannot do it anymore because you deleted the crop pixels. That's a new change. So I'm gonna go back here, and if I want to go backwards again, I'm gonna go to edit and undo, and do edit and undo again. You see that back and forth. Or I can go to file, and if I click OK, I can go and revert. Revert takes me to the last saved one. If I didn't save it, I'm good. So first of all, never save it with the same name. And now back to the crop tool. Let's say I'm going to be with the regular aspect ratio. And I'm going to try. And I'm going to try. But instead of clicking OK, I'm going to click on do not delete cropped pixels. Do you see that? That wasn't there like 2 or 3 years ago. Unless you were in preschool in middle school 2 years ago? No, right? I said preschool, I'm sorry. So it's new. And if I click OK, what is this one? It's a non-destructive crop tool. If I click again and I tell you make it a little different, look at that. I can rechange it. I can save it, go back tomorrow, and still doing some stuff with it. Is it still take small memory? Of course it does. Because what do you have there? Everything. But in the beginning, when you work, maybe you want to work with this workflow. Another workflow that you have here is the word straighten. Do you see the word straighten? All the way up in the option. Click on it. Go to your screen. Do you see that I have a little ruler underneath my cursor? Especially people who never used Photoshop. I want you to tell me if you see the word straighten on the option. Yes? And do you see when you go back to here, I'm going to go to my horizon line. I'm not going to try to fix it with doing a straight line. I'm going to mimic the non-straight line. Do a line with the same horizon. And then release. And look what happens. Do you see the machine basically fixed it? And if I click OK, I basically have an image that has more or less the nice horizon line, and it is cropped the way I wanted it. But what if you want to continue cropping and everybody says, I love that you straighten it, but look what I'm doing. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to put it a little bit down. If I click OK, what's going to happen? Do you see some areas because of the crop, you lost part of your image? But there's another tool now. If you lose something, if you click on something called content aware, the machine will try to fill in the pixels that are missing. Why am I saying try? Because it's not always successful. Does that make sense? It's not always good. With the next image that we go, you see when it's not good. Now it's okay. I'm going to click OK, and look what happened. See, it's not so good. See what happened here? It's not really looking like before. It tried to rebuild it and put in a little bit of the area over here. But I got all the pixels more or less when I want. If I don't like that, of course I'm going to do Command Z or Control Z and leave it like this, because we didn't really do a best job. Sometime we'll do a better job. Let's click on the other one, straighten. This one, it's not going to do definitely a good job, because whenever there is a perspective or a person, the machine cannot rebuild kind of like the pixels. It's good with water and sand and landscape. So if I'm going to make it a little smaller, I'm going to go to straighten and try to straighten the background here. And you see, if I am going to click on content aware and click OK, do you see it didn't really fix it perfectly? Do you see what happened to her jacket? It's kind of a double jacket, and look what happened here to her hair. Just showed up there. So you have to be really careful with stuff like this. There's a way to fix it while you're working with it, and that's what we're gonna do next. How do you fix some stuff like that? Does that make sense? If you go back to my Lake Palace high res, and I'm not anymore on the crop, if you felt like cropping just to see the house here, guess what's gonna happen? If you decided, I want to have the other one and just this one on top, that's not going to be a good thing. Why not? Everything was cropped. So if you needed to see just these little buildings, the solution is to select it and then have it there. Does that make sense? So now we're going to look at few things with content aware, and then we're going to build something really, really simple to select something and put stuff one on top of each other, and then put some type and some effect to it, and maybe we'll do something for like a social media or something like that. So I don't want any of these files anymore, so I'm going to right click on it and say close all on the tabs, and I'm not going to save anything. Then I went back to normal. Now I'm going to do file and open. Before we're going to do a few things for a little project, what I want you to do is to go to your area, and there's an area that says selections. Do you see that? There's a lot of selections over here. You have it in your PDF if you want to practice, but there's no time to do all this stuff, of course. But do you see an area that says content aware? This is what I want you to see, because this is actually what we did with the crop. Do you see that? Double click here, and there are 3 images there, and we're going to open all of them. We're going to select one, hold on the shift key and select the other one and click open. And right away get out of the crop tool. I don't want to crop anymore. I want to go in here, and this is going to happen a lot for you guys. If you start working somewhere, they're going to give you a few images, and they're going to say, listen, there's a person who was standing in front of the building. We have no copyrights for him. He didn't even know he's there. We need to eliminate him from the image and then use the image. Or you have to eliminate the garbage can from the front of the image, or you have to eliminate the flag from front of the image. There's a lot of heavy duty stuff that you can do perfectly, but what if you just, you know, sometime when you, especially when you work in communication, just need to do a fast presentation to show a client, this is what we're going to do for you, but it doesn't have to be perfect. They have to get the idea of it. So content aware is going to let you eliminate stuff faster as a startup, and you can still use it to a presentation. I'm not going to use it to a full-blown retouching, because then you have to go back to masking and doing it perfect. So I want you to go to the right side and click on the layers panel. Do you see I have a layers panel? And it says background. Do you see that? I want to duplicate it. Why? Because I want to see the before and after, and in case we're going to ruin the original, we have still the original. So how would I, there's a lot of ways to duplicate, and one of them, which the easiest one, is to go to the area on the layers panel. Do you see these little 4 lines over here? I call them the flyout menu, and you can say duplicate layer. Do you see that? And then they're even going to ask you to give it a name. So maybe you're going to call it retouched. So you know this is the one you're taking care of. The other one is the original. And you want to be on the one you're retouching. Now I want to eliminate here some of the little areas over here that you have, like they're kind of dark. I don't want them for my presentation. And then I'm going to eliminate some of the light posts. Very simple. I want you to go to your lasso tool. If you click on the letter L, it will take you to the lasso tool. And do it really simple. What is the lasso tool? It is a selection tool that works like a pen. Like you just draw. It's a freehand selection tool. For complicated stuff, people have some problems. The way this one works now for content aware, it doesn't have to be a perfect selection. If it is perfect, it's not good. What does it mean? The machine wants to see a little bit of the edges around it to get pixel information. So I'm going to go around this little area here, and look at that. I'm just going to do around it. You see, I'm not really selecting the entire one purposely. Because if I needed to do a good selection, I'm going to really select just this little thing. And then go to Edit and Fill. Do you see that? You're going to get a dialog box here. In this dialog box, they're going to ask you a question. What do you want to fill the selection with? Inside the content, click inside, and there's a bunch of stuff. The reason mine said white, I think because the last time I did it, I filled it with white. It always inherits the last thing that you did.
It's this one, mine is content.
Yeah. The default could be that. Mine was white because maybe yesterday I filled something with white. You guys could be pattern, black, gray, foreground, background, color. Click on content aware. If content aware is grayed out, that means that you have no selection on the screen. You have to have a selection. Now click OK. And tell me what you see. Magic. Go to select and deselect. So you see I eliminated this little stain. Now go to this little post here, and I'm not going to do it all the way down. I'm just going to select around the lamp post. Where is it? Next to the trees. Go to Edit, Fill, Content Aware, and deselect. Command or Control D. Do you see that I don't have the lamppost all of a sudden? Why did I do it? Not all the way. I want you to zoom into it. You can zoom in Photoshop by using the zoom tool, but you can always use a shortcut, which that's the perfect way to do. Command plus or Control plus, if you're using window, will zoom in to the area. And then the space bar will take you to the hand tool. Why didn't I do it in one sitting? Because this one has a different color. Do you see that? So I'm going to go into the edge of the lamppost and do Edit, Content Fill, Content Aware, and deselect. And then maybe go to the area here and do Fill, Edit, Fill, Content Aware, and deselect. So you see, and this is I'm going to do it one by one and eliminate it. Now go to your layers panel, and maybe I'm going to eliminate this one here. Now if I'm going to zoom into it and I go to before and after, this is why I did the before and after. Do you see the eye? I'm turning it on and off, and I can see the stuff that I have. Is it doing a perfect one? Not all the way, depending. Like let's say I'm gonna go to this one here, and I'm gonna do edit, fill, content aware, deselect. Not bad. Sometimes it will bring you something else a little bit inside, and you're gonna say, I don't like it so much, I'm gonna do it again and again. But basically, if I needed to eliminate it right away, I can do it very fast and say to the client, you know what, don't worry about it. The entire area is gonna have no flags, no stains, just a plain house. So I can go back here. Not gonna be perfect on this one especially, but I can assure him that he can see that and deselect and all of a see a little bit here. So what am I doing? Doing it again. And all of a sudden, I don't have the lamppost in front of the house. Could be a person that I didn't want to have there and I eliminated. If this needed to be for high-end retouching, let's say magazine, there's more stuff you need to do to it. But look how fast it looks if you are a location manager for a movie, if you are working later as PR for interior designers and they have to fix some stuff, it will take you 5 minutes. Does that make sense? Let's go into the other content aware. Let's look at this one. This one has images over here, and I can go in and decide which one I want to work with. The first thing, what should I do? Duplicate my layer. I can also go to layer menu bar and duplicate layer. Same idea. And again, I'm going to call it retouch. Now I can go in and change stuff. What does it mean? I can go in, let's say the photographer forgot this little area here. So look what I'm doing. I'm doing a selection around it and leaving some grass around it. Why? To think, to know how to put some, because if I don't, it's not going to know what to look for. And then I'm going to do edit and fill, content aware, and click OK and deselect. Do you see it disappeared? It did have a little mark there. Do you see that? I see it. A little line, not perfect. So it depending, if you need to do a little bit more stuff, you can go to the area that has the line and do again edit and fill and content aware, and now you almost eliminated the line. Does that make sense? But content aware also has some other things to it. This one will take some stuff, and you see what happened before for the girl that we straightened it and her hair came on the other side, or the pyramid went a little bit to the other side. Content aware has a mind of its own. It'll say, I see the pixels and I'm going to refill it for you, but you might not like it. There is another one that it kind of like it. It tells you what goes in there. What does it mean? This girl, I want to go and do a content aware for her. I'm going to go into my selection tool and I'm going to do a big selection around her. I want to kind of like make her disappear, but I want to make sure I know what's going on in here. I want to make sure. So there's another tool for that. Click on the letter J on your keyboard. It will take you to the healing area. Click inside and you see you have healing areas. Healing spot, healing brush. Then you have patch tool. Do you see that? It's inside. How do I see it inside? If you never used Photoshop, if you click inside and hold on your mouth, you see other tools. That's how Photoshop has its toolbox. I call them the roommates. So I'm going to go into the patch tool. All the way up in my control, I'm going to tell the patch tool how to behave. Right now it says I'm going to behave normal. I don't want it to behave normal. I click inside, I'm going to say I want you to behave as a content aware. And I'm going to go over and you see the little patch on her. And I'm going to say I want this to go in, I want this to go in. I'm not clicking, I want this to go in, I want her to go in. See, I'm going to decide what's going to go into this area. And then I'm going to go back here and release. And look what happened. It didn't really do a good thing here. So I'm just going to, because it's very close, so I'm going to go in here and say maybe I want to have this one. It looks a little bit better, but a little fuzzy. Do you see that? So once it's on a fuzzy mode, I go again all the way up, not deselecting, and I'm going to go to the places structure and start to make it 1. Looks a little bit better. And 5, no, see 7, very kind of fuzzy. So I'm going to start playing with it a little bit. Maybe 2. And then maybe I'm going to play a little bit with the color and see if things are changing. If you think you like it, you click deselect. If you don't like it yet, you go here and try again. And start changing the structure again and see. I did 2 and 2 I like it almost, and then I'm deselecting. And then I can go around this area and do more stuff and deselect. So it could be a combination of content aware and content aware patch. Does that make sense? And now look at that. On, off, on, off. It starts to look better automatically. So you guys can start making magic with all the stuff that you have. There's more content aware things that you can play, but basically this is the one that you see also in your crop tool. Does that make sense? Again, I already see all the stuff, so I might go in and put this one here. I might play a little bit with the structure and then do that and deselect and then say, okay, I want to work with something different, and I'm going to do. You have to be careful with stuff like hair. If they are standing in different areas and different colors, you have to be very careful. You see that? If I go to content aware, you might do stuff like this. Why? Because I have something from very dark from very light. It doesn't like it. Does that make sense? So even if I play a little bit with the structure, oh, I did that, that's a little bit better. And I play a little bit with the color. But if I deselect, do you see what happened over here? I have to fix that. It's not perfect. Does that make sense? So you have to be careful and kind of like do it again and again sometime. But it is a great thing for an immediate stuff to work with. Does that make sense? So now we're going to start looking at selections. And while we're looking at selection, we're going to look at layers because we want to do a little project. So I'm going to close that and close that. I am going to do File and New. I'm going to do a new document. I know that you guys have the education version. I know that some of you do not have these templates. We don't need them. Go to the print area and go into the preset detail and call that post for social media, and then we are going to make that square. So for now, let's make it 5 inches by 5 inches. I have the resolution over here. I am not going to leave it 300 for two reasons. Because some of the images that I have for you to go and bring it, they're not 300. The other reason, for social media, you might not need that. So I might go back here and do it, let's say 150. A lot of time in social media, they're going to ask you maybe to do it pixels, and they're going to tell you make it 750 pixels by 750 pixels. Or they're going to give you the size that you need to work with, more or less. I'm taking a square because everybody is squaring nowadays, but there's banners for all kind of places and things like this. And then I am going here and clicking create.
Should we change it to 750 then?
I mean, it's the same thing, it doesn't matter. So it's the same thing, it's 5 by 5 and it's 150 PPI and we're all good. I have a background here because this is how I opened it. When you have a background in your layers panel, there's nothing you can do to the background. What can you do to it? You can fill the background with the color. You can go in and draw on it, but you see you cannot change the opacity or anything. Nothing. Because background is flat. Can I make a background and make it into a layer? Yes, you can. What's the easiest way to tell this white background to be a layer? Simply double click on the word background. And it's going to tell you I'm going to make it into layer 0. As soon as you can name something, it's not a background. Background doesn't have a name. The name is background and it's locked. So let's call it background. But now this is the one you gave it the name. And look what's happening over here. You can play with the opacity. You can play with something called blending mode. You can actually go to your layer move tool all the way up. And basically later on, you see what I can do? I'm moving this white background because it's a layer. I don't want to move it, but I can move that. Does that make sense? You can even turn off the visibility button. If you have a background, you cannot turn it off. Does that make sense? You can also make a file new and tell it what color background you want. And tell it blue and leave it blue. What if you change your mind now and said, you know what, I really don't need it to be a layer. I want it to be right now a background. You go to the flyout menu and you say flatten image. And right away look what it did. Change it to the name background. You can fill it with the color. It's not going to move. It's also not going to turn off. Does that make sense? Why am I showing you that? Because when you do file open and open an Adobe Photoshop file, like somebody took a picture like we did, it opens as a background unless somebody saved it as a Photoshop file. So all your JPEGs or the PNG that somebody gives you, they just have a background. Does that make sense? Even if I go back here to, let's say, file and recent, and let's say I'm going to open Hawaii. Do you see how it opens? It opens as a background. And I cannot do, can I make that into a layer? Yes, I can, but it is a background. Does that make sense? I'm going to close that. Now we want to go in and put something, yes.
How did you close it again? Like you just...
When I opened it, I clicked here and I went to the tab and click on the X.
Okay.
I want to fill it with a color. Let's look at the swatch panel. If you're new to Photoshop, we are on a workspace right now, and by default, most of the time, you're going to have the essential workspace. That's what is the essential workspace? It's your default, basically. So you see the swatches? These are your generic swatches, except this one that I made today. What does it mean? In Photoshop, when you open File New, each one of you has your own swatch panel. It doesn't belong to the file. It belongs to your Photoshop. You can make as many colors as you want. It stays on your machine with your Photoshop. It's an application based. If I send it to somebody and I'm going to ask them, what kind of color did you use? We're going to have to send them the swatch later, but not. But I can also put it in my library and I have it. I want to just fill it with the color. You can see all the way to the left you have the toolbox. I'm going to make the toolbox 2 columns because it's easier. And what is this one? This is your foreground color and this one is your background color. I'm going to click on the foreground color and I'm going to go to my swatch panel and I'm going to click on one of the swatches. I'm going to find a red. Just click on red. Do you see the foreground is red? Do you see any change on your thing? Nothing. Photoshop, you can click anywhere you want. If you don't tell the machine to do it, nothing's going to be done. I'm going to also go in. You see the arrow key here? I'm going to click on the arrow and switch. Now the foreground is white. I'm going to click blue. So I have a foreground blue and a background red. Most of the time you can do either or to fill it with something. One way of filling an area or a selected area is edit and fill. Remember this one from Content Aware. And look at that. Under the fill, look what you can do. But look at Content Aware. It's grayed out. Why is it grayed out? Because I don't have a selection on the screen. I can fill the area with the foreground. That's going to be blue. I can fill it with a background. That's going to be my red. I can also fill it with the pattern, history, black, gray, and white. What is color? If last minute I'm saying to myself, don't like the colors I just chose, I'm going to click on color. It's going to open this one. And I can change my mind. I can click here. I can click here. I can even add it to my swatches. And the new color that I just found, add to the swatch, click OK, it's here. Does that make sense? Click on another one, and to the swatch, click OK, it's here. If I click OK and click OK again, look what happened to my background. It filled it with this color. Does that make sense? Another easy way to fill it with the color, choose any foreground color. Click on the letter G on your keyboard. Click inside and you see a paint bucket tool. Do you see that? And basically just click with the color or any other color and you will fill it with the color. Does that make sense? So that will fill an area or a selected area with the foreground color. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go in and choose kind of like an orangey looking, and that's it. If I want to start saving it now, I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to start saving it as an Adobe Photoshop. Why? Because I want to start building layers. If it is a JPEG, it's going to be flattened. Does that make sense? Click Save. Now I'm going to do File and Open. And then I'm going back to my intro folder. And then I am going to go to the seminar and handout. And I'm going to go into the area that I have the postcard in the training assets. And in the postcard I have asset postcard. These guys are different sizes. We're going to crop them later. I'm going to double click on the cloud PSD. Just double click on it. I want to copy that and bring it to the other one. I'm going to first check image size, and I'm going to see it's 5 by 7.1250. So that's not bad. What does it mean? I can go in and actually crop it if I want ahead of time and then copy it. So what should I do? I'm going to go to my crop tool And then I can go in here and I can say 5 by 5. Do you see what happened? I gave it a size exactly, and automatically I don't have to worry about it. I cropped it. I am going to delete the crop pixels right now. Why? Because I don't care. I want just the sky. Click OK. And now I'm going to do select all, edit, and copy. And go back to my social media and do edit and paste. And look what you have here. Look at your layers panel. What do you see in your layers panel? Do you see it says layer 1? You have a layer already. I'm going to double click on the word layer and call it sky. What can I do with this layer? I can make it smaller. I can also go into the opacity. Look at that. And look what it starts reading. The stuff from below. Does that make sense? I'm just going to leave it as is for now. And save. Because I want to go and click on it again and just do something else. I want to go into File and Open. And in the same area that I have pineapple, PSD. Do you see that? And click Open. This one, I don't want to go in and crop it all the way like this. Or maybe I want to do it in a certain way. But I want to select it also. So if I go to Crop Tool, look what the Crop Tool wants to do automatically. It remembers the last thing. If I kind of want to do that, I can go into the crop and I can go in and decide that I'm going to move that here a little bit and then move that here and move that here a little bit and basically go in and move the image until I can see the down of the stuff that may be here, or I want to see a little bit more of the pineapple. Something like that. And let's say now I'm going to click OK. Not the perfect pineapple, but it's okay. Now I want to go in and copy it and bring it over. So what's the first thing we need to do? Select all. Remember the shortcut, Command A or Control A. Selecting the entire area.
Mine is completely like grayed out. They won't let me
You
see.
have to click OK after cropping.
Okay.
Every time you do anything in Photoshop, you have to finish one, go to the other one. It's like, and then I'm going to do edit and copy. I'm going back to the post for social media, and what should I do? Edit and paste. Yay. And I'm going to call it pine. What's wrong with this one? What do we don't like here? The white background. In this case, I want to see the sky and I want to see a pineapple on top of the sky. But I selected the whole thing and I still have the white. Yes.
So my layers tab isn't showing anymore on the right hand side.
The layer at all. So
The menu, yeah.
go to window and bring it back.
Oh, okay.
If something disappears, let's say this disappears, there are few things to do. Let's say it disappears for me. One way to go to the workspace that you're on and reset your workspace. It will bring back everything that you have. Another one is basically go to the window menu bar and find everything. All the panels are basically here. I want to select the white. Now we're going to look at the selection tool, because select tool is wonderful. But what if you have to select objects all over the place, right? So we are going to go to the white background. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go to a simple tool. which going to be your magic wand. Click on the letter W. How are you going to know where everything is? I gave you a PDF with all the toolbox, and that's something to study where everything is. I'm inside this little one. There's two selection tools. One is the quick selection tool and the other one is the magic wand. Do you see that? The magic wand works by tolerance. What does it mean? By default, you see 32. What does it mean, 32 tolerance? It's the tolerance of the color that you click on. Just to play with it, I want you to be on the layer, on the pineapple layer. Don't be on the sky layer. And just click on the green patch. Look how much of the green is selected. 32 amount of the green tolerance around the area. If I made the tolerance a little bit bigger, let's say I made it to 83 and click in the same area, look what starts happening. It will select a little bit more. Does that make sense? And more and more and more. I'm going to deselect. I do not want to select the pineapple. What do I want to select? What's easier there? The background. So I'm going to go with my tolerance and I'm basically going to make it even small, 10 tolerance. And I want to click on a white patch. And look what's selected there. Only one. Why is that? It should select all the white. But it also tells you contiguous colors. You see that? These are colors next to each other. Turn that off. And then click on a white patch. And look what's selected. All the white background. If I'm never going to use this white background, which in this case never, all what you need to do is delete. And deselect. What do we have here? Now we have the pineapple. Does that make sense? Now maybe we'll bring one more and then gonna do a little type on it, like one word or something. So I can go into File and Open, and we're gonna do something really simple. We're gonna go into the flower PSD and open. This case, the magic wand might be a little hard for me because I want to select it before bringing it and then copy and paste a layer. I might go to my quick selection tool. It's inside the magic wand. Do you see that? This one is a cross between a lasso tool and a magic wand, and it works with the size of the brush. Watch what I'm doing right now. I'm not clicking one time like this, like with the magic wand. I'm going to click at the edge of the flower and I'm going to start, I'm holding it, not removing, and dragging my curve, dragging, and you see it starts selecting the flower. Do you see that? I want to go and make sure it selects again more and more. And now I'm going to get into a dangerous area, and you see it selected also this area. If I don't want this area to be selected, drags the front flower, I can subtract from my selection. What does it mean? If I'm not going to tell the machine to subtract and tell it to do a regular selection, it's going to take away this one. Where is the subtract? You see all the way up? You see the plus? You see the next to it, the minus? Click on the minus and go in and subtract the area that you do not want to select. And now it will subtract even more. Oh, see, I don't care. I'm going to go to add to selection and I'm going to add more. I'm going to go subtract and subtract some areas. Does that make sense? So you can go back and forth to add and subtract my selection, and while I'm doing it, I can also change the size of the brush So it's going to be a lot smaller and help me select. Does that make sense? But there is another tool here that you're going to love. You don't know if it's a good selection or not. It's very hard to see. Before I'm taking it, do you see it says select and mask? Do you see that? Click on that. It's going to take you to another screen. All the way up it says view mode. Probably the last time I did something, I was in the black and white mode. You can be on the white mode, you can be on the, yes.
Sorry, I wasn't following. I was just selecting all of it. How did you do that again?
I went back here and it says select and mask and clicked. And it takes you to the last place you were. I'm going inside and I'm going to say I want to see it on black. And if you have some mistakes here, and I see some mistakes, while you're here you can change the mistakes. You can even go to your lasso tool. Do you see that? And you do have the symbols. The first symbol is a regular symbol or add to selection. The second one, subtract. I'm going to tell the machine take this one away. I'm going to take the machine take this one away. I can tell the machine to bring this one away again, or take that. So whatever I have there, I can tell the machine to work with it. And of course now I made a mistake, so I'm going to tell the machine to take it away. You can also have a place here that you can change the feathering. Do you see that? So it's softer. You can contrast. You can also shift the edges. So it looks a lot better before you copy it. Does that make sense? And if I click OK, I have a selection. That's going to be way too big for our image, but that's fine. I'm going to say edit and copy. Go back to my social media and paste. And look at that. It's pretty big. I'm going to call it flower. And then I'm going to go to edit and free transform. In this case, it's okay for me because what am I doing? Making it smaller. Smaller is okay with Photoshop. I'm going to hold on the shift key and just make it smaller. I can play with it until I say okay. I can still play. I can even rotate it. I can go back here and put it like this, and once I like it, I can click OK, and I do have the image on top. If I want to make it even smaller, I can do edit, free transform, and make it smaller. If you wanted to make it bigger now, it's going to start pixelating. And this is why when we do another level in Photoshop, I'm going to show you how to work with smart objects, but you can make them bigger and smaller. But I'm saving. Now we might do a frame, but I want to make sure before that we take a fast look at the type. Also, we're going to go in and look at the pineapple, and I don't like the way it looks here. Maybe I don't want it like this. I can go and play with the opacity. But I also can go in and you see the word normal? Click inside. You have all kind of blending modes, which will take the color on top and will read the color from the bottom. So if you click on darken mode, look what happened to your pineapple. Click multiply mode. Do you see the pineapple has some sky on it? If you click, let's say, on the overlay mode, look what happened to your pineapple. It looks like it has some sky on it. So it's another option. Or if you click on, let's say, hard mix, look what happened to your pineapple. Maybe that would be interesting. to something. Does that make sense? So these blending modes are going to read whatever underneath it. And if I go in, let's say, difference mode, look at this pineapple. But I'm not going to do difference. I might go in and make that maybe, going to make that overlay for now. The flower I'm going to leave as is, because the flower can be also a blending mode. See, if I have it multiply, you can see part of the sky. So that's kind of an option for you to take a bunch of images, one on top of each other, and play with them. If you want it to be a little more interesting, you can bring another image with something and paste it in there. Even any other image that you had from before, and paste it with a background, and it's going to be something that jazzed up. Does that make sense? The next thing we're going to do is click on the letter T. And the letter T that we have here, that's it's going to go in, and you want to go in here and create type. And then we're going to do the other stuff around. If you click one time with your letter T on the screen, do you see it flickers at you? And probably you guys have Myriad Pro 12, right? Look at the type all the way. It says Myriad Pro 12 by default, all the way up. That's your default font. Mine says Arial Bold 57. Why is that? Maybe I used it the other day, and I did. So that's okay. So I'm going to click inside, and look what I have here. In Photoshop over here, these are all the fonts that you have in your system. Do you see that? So I am going in here, and you see here, and let's see what are they. Do you see the word TT? This is true type. I know some of you are working with Windows and some of you are working with Mac. If it says TT on my machine and you really love the font I'm using and you want it, I can give it only to the Mac users. TT is not cross-platform. You have to buy for PC and that. Everything that says O on it, you see the word O, this is open type technology. They are going to be cross-platform for Mac and Windows. Does that make sense? And then you see the word TK and A. A is also not cross-platform, and TK is TypeKit. This one, I think you guys, because you have education, you can download like 30 free ones. If it's not education, you can download 300 of them. It's really, the type is not here. It's there. It comes in, it's on your computer. You send it to somebody that doesn't have it. Photoshop's going to tell you, you don't have the font. What do you want to do? But Photoshop is okay with it. If you're not going to change anything, Photoshop will stay as is. If you're going to change something, Photoshop will substitute it for you. So let's all go, and everywhere, let's all go and find type called impact. Type impact. And why do I say impact? Because I know everybody has it. Impact comes with everything. Myriad comes, but not the entire family. Minion comes, not with everything. There's a lot of restrictions lately because of the cloud, and not everybody has the same fonts. But I know everybody has Arial and Impact and Verdana, or which I hate, and whatever it is. But Impact. So let's say over here, make sure go in and make it 72 and type the word Hawaii. And then I'm going to click, and I forgot to click on Impact. So I'm going to go in and Impact, and you see I have Impact Regular. Do you see it says all the way up Impact Regular? Do you see it says 72? It says align left and look at the color. Why is my color, and I'm gonna click OK, why is my color orange? Bless you.
Because your foreground.
My foreground is orange. So you see what happened to the type? Also, it went directly to a layer. You don't have to prepare a layer for type. And it's still live type. What does it mean live? I can change the font. I can change what I'm typing. And I also can change the typeface. I want to change the color. If I go to edit and fill, you're going to tell me it's grayed out. Yes, it is. This is not how it works with type. You see the letter T over here? You see this color all the way up here? You double click on that. And then you can choose a color from here. And you see it changing already on your text. Check it out. See? Maybe I want to go in and get a blue form in my image. Do you see what happens? Maybe I want to get Hawaii pink or dark pink or yellow or orangey or whatever I have. Do you see that? While I have it here, I can sample any color that I want. I can also add it to my swatch. Does that make sense? And you see over here, it adds it to the swatch. You can even name it, but you can also add it to your cloud library. But everybody has a cloud library that you can open, give it a name, and bring the colors over. Mine is the current one, and if I click OK to edit, it will tell me which color I have, and I have something called PS project, and that's my library. So I can go and choose colors from there. I don't like the way Hawaii is typed. I'm going to highlight it again. I don't want to retype it though. So all the way up in my control, do you see next to almost a check mark, there's a little folder here. Click on that. That's going to be your character and paragraph panels. I'm going to click on the character, and I kind of want to go in and make it all caps. Do you see what happened? This is regular. This is italic, which you don't want to do italic to something is not italic. This is all caps. This is small caps. This is superscript, subscript, underline, and strike through. I'm going to make it all caps. And while I have it here, I'm going to go in and make it 100. And it's pretty big, but I'm going to go to the move tool and move it. So I have the word Hawaii, and I'm going to go in and I typed it and it's blue. What else can I do here? While I'm on the type, I click on the type tool. You have something called tracking. That everybody knows what tracking is. Tracking will make space to the entire word. So you see, if I go to, let's say, 75, look what happened to Hawaii. Do you see? The letters are like that. If I'm going to go into -50, it's going to be squished. So depending how you wanted it to be, you can change the tracking of your type. You can also check something with the kerning. See, the A and the I are not perfect. I'm going to click with the type between the A and the I. And this is the kerning. I'm going to go here and I say 10. You see, it makes it a little bit. So what is kerning? The space between a pair of characters. Does that make sense? So if I like everything that I did, I'm going to go and click OK. And now I'm going to move it around. You can see I move it here, and I see my smart guides. I want to have it here. And I want to add some special effects to it. First, what? Yes?
When I move it, is there any way to automatically put it in the middle?
It's not automatically here because it's not a layout program, so it doesn't have it like in InDesign and Illustrator go to the center, but you can go and move it around. You also, if it is, let's say, aligned to another, let's say if you select 2 layers, you can kind of align them together to the area that you have, but basically you cannot. You have to go in and select it, and you see it will tell you where it is. If you see kind of like the smart guide, you see it's basically at the center of the canvas. You see little lines there? And that's how it's going to do it. Because it is not a layout program, it will relate to it really like a canvas. Because even if I go into the type, you see I have alignments. It's aligned left. It doesn't look like align left. Look at this. I'm going to align right. See where it goes? If that was a layout, it will align it to the area there. This is aligns it to whatever you clicked in the beginning, because it's not kind of a layout program. So it relates to it. You click, you by yourself. Does that make sense? Now I want to go in. There's something really ugly that I never use. Is this one. I'm just going to show it to you. Click here, and this one is going to go in and click on that, and then you can go in here and do like all kind of stuff like that. I don't like to do it, but you can do it just to play with it in the beginning. So it gives you kind of text wrap on different kind of things. You can wave it. If you click OK, if you don't like it, go back, and always you can say none, and it goes back to normal. Does that make sense? It's this one. Text on kind of stuff. But now we want to go in and create some special effects. Maybe a drop shadow. Maybe we want to create embossing thing, so it's looking like 3D-ish. Maybe we want to create all kind of stuff and then play with it. So what should I do with it? You see all the way down, do you see the word FX? If you click inside, you have something that says blending options. That's one way to go to the effects. And it's going to open a huge dialog box here. And everything you're going to do, you can save as a style, and you can see a little demo on the right side. What does it mean? I can go in here, but if I don't want to go from here, I can also double click at the edge of the layer, not on the word Hawaii, because it's going to ask me to change. Double click on the empty area, it's going to open that. Same idea. Now I want to add a drop shadow. You see all the way down, you say the word drop shadow. Just click on the check mark. And each one of us gonna get a different drop shadow. Why? Because maybe the last one that you did, that was your drop shadow. In this moment, you don't know exactly how it looks. If you really want to change any of the effects, they all work the same. After you do a check mark, click on the word drop shadow. Do you see a dialog box that tells you everything about the drop shadow? You see it says drop shadow. Tells you the structure. It tells you the opacity. It will tell you the angle. It will tell you the distance. How much it's spreading. The size of your drop shadow. You can even with drop shadow go in and even move it manually. And you see once I move it manually, you can see it tells you exactly how I moved it and where did I put it. Does that make sense? Then you do have quality of contours. If you click inside the arrow here, you can change different kind of contours, and that's going to be different kind of drop shadow. Usually for drop shadow, I would stay at default. Then they're gonna ask you, you want to lock, knock out, or make it as a default. Look what I have. If you reset it to default, it will take you to the original Photoshop default drop shadow. And then if you don't and you want to save it, and every time you want to make it as a default, it's going to make it as a default. You can also say save new style. Do you see it? And you can see how it looks here. Do you see that? But let's add to it also bevel and emboss. So I'm going to click on the check mark. When you click on the check mark only, you still see the dialog box of the drop shadow. Do you see that? Click on the word bevel and emboss. And now let's look at it. You have inner, outer style. Inner style. You have an emboss style. You have a pillow emboss. You have a stroke emboss. Different kind. I'm going to look at inner bevel. You can make it chisel hard or you can make it smooth. You can change the depth. You can change the size. You see that smooth? Look at mine when I'm making it. It looks kind of 3D, but if I make it chisel hard, you can see you have straight lines into it. You have to be careful not to overdo it. You kind of don't want to see something that it's not readable and ugly. But basically it is an effect. And you see here the samples. Do you see that? Every time I do something, you see here, it's going to tell you. If I change it to smooth, it's going to smooth that. You can even change the contours, and each time you change something, your drop shadow is going to look, your effect's going to look completely different. Does that make sense? So basically all of the effects work like this here. Different ones. You have contours, you have I can even put textures on it if I want. I can put a stroke. I can put an inner shadow and start going in and see what kind of inner shadow that I want to go, and what can I put, and what kind of color of an inner shadow that I want to put in here, and all kind of stuff like that. If you like what you see, the one that you have to be more careful, these are the overlays. So one takes over the other one unless in between them you play with blending modes and opacity. Does that make sense? But I want to go in and save it. You see it says new style? I'm going to call it text. Text for social media. Because maybe every week that's what you do. And all the text style, not the font, has to look exactly the same. I'm going to click OK. What bothers me here that I have the tracking, so I'm going to change the tracking again to 0 and it looks better again. Where did I save it to? Where is it? Let's go to Window and bring the Styles panel. And you're going to see it over here. At the moment I have the style by name, but you can have it also with thumbnail or big thumbnail. This is the styles. These are the generic style that you get with Photoshop. The last one is the one I just made. These guys are pretty ugly. While you have it selected, just play with them and look. Look at this one. Look at this one. Why would you want to have an effect like this? But you can see that, but you can change it. But you can see different kind of effects with different kind of thing. Every time I'm going to click on the effect, it's going to tell me actually what people did. So if I click on the one I just built, it will tell you that. You are not going to get at home this guide that I have here, but when you open a file, you can double click and resave it to yours. Does that make sense? So you can start building your own library of effects. If you want to go and have more effects, you can go to the flyout menu. They're giving you a bunch of effects here. Abstract styles, text effects, text effect number 2. And if you append them, you get them over here. These guys are even uglier. Why would you want to have stuff like this? But hey, you know, some of them might look good. Look at this one. Or maybe you have something that looks like that. Can you change any of these? Yes, you can. By going back, let's say I have this one. And I like it, but I don't like this little stroke around there. I can double click and look what opens here. First of all, you don't see everything. You can go into the effect and say show all effect, or just see whatever we used. And look at that over here. Maybe I don't want my stroke. So see what I did? Already made it a lot nicer. Took away the stroke. Now we have the gradient overlay. What if I don't want this gradient overlay, and I might found something that I have here with little thing like this? That doesn't look good, or maybe that, or maybe my foreground and background, or maybe just this one. So it's already looking a little bit better. If I can feel, I can bring back the stroke, or I can double click on the stroke and make the stroke that it is going to be just a color, and maybe make it really, really thin, and make that maybe blue. So it's not as bad. If I want to save it as a new style, look at that. I already have it as a new style in my style panel. Does that make sense? So this is how you can do as many styles as you want. Are the styles going only to text? No. Where are they going? To every layer. They call it layer styles. So if I want to go to my flower and decide to do the flower like that, it's going to look like this. Or when I go and do that, it's look like this. It's going to look like that. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can see that you can do different kind of things with the one that you have, or say over here, or click here, or say, you know what, really don't want to have any effects on it, and it's all gone. Or maybe I'm going to double click on the flower and just make it with a drop shadow. Does that make sense? So I can go back to my Hawaii, and I don't like this one, and I'm gonna go in and click on the one that I did before, and I'm gonna go back to Hawaii, and I'm going to go back to the one I just made, and I'm saving. Do you guys have stuff like that on the screen? Now we're going to look at a little bit more of the blending mode before we are going to send it goodbye to anywhere. I might go to my move tool, go to the flower, and move it around. And you're going to ask me, I kind of want to have a few more flowers. I can duplicate the layer like I did the other one when I did the retouching by going here to duplicate layer. How many flower layers you see on my screen? On my screen. On the screen 1, on the layers 2. When you duplicate, it goes one on top of each other. So I'm going to click on this one and move it. So you're going to tell me, you know what if I wanted to move it and duplicate it and not do it one like this and one like that? That's with a shortcut. Hold down your Option or Alt key if you're using Windows, and click on the flower and drag a copy. You see what happened? Look at that. Do you see the Option key? Do you see a double cursor? Do you guys see it? You hold on the Option, you hold it, and with the Move tool you basically move it and copy it. Now if I just want to move it, I can go to each layer and move that, and then I can go back here, and you see I want to go and start moving the layers together. And look what happened. I want to move this one, the one below, and look what's moving. Because all the way up it says auto select layer. I didn't click on it, but if you click on auto select layer, you can move the layers you click on. Do you see that? And you can change the hierarchy. You can also change the hierarchy within your layers panel. So I can put one flower all the way up here, and another one all the way here, and another one here. Does that make sense? The one on top of each other. How does it work with Photoshop? The first one is in the bottom, and then so you can play with it. What if you wanted them to be in a group and move together? You're gonna select the bottom one, hold on the shift key and select the top one. Do you see all the 4 flowers or 3 that you have are selected? Now you want to group it. You're gonna go to the layer and say new group from layers. Do you see that? And then call that flowers. And now it's a group. So if you want to move them together, do not click on auto select layer, because that's going to move layer by layer. Either do auto select and change it to group. And now it's going to move the group. Because if you stayed on auto select layer, it's going to move, open the group and move it. Does that make sense? So either auto select group or none and be on it to move it. You have to be on a layer in order to move it. Hawaii, I'm moving Hawaii. Maybe Hawaii is here or maybe Hawaii is there. And you see I have that with it. Does that make sense? Now maybe I want to make some changes. Maybe I want to go to the pineapple and not do it in an overlay mode, make it normal mode. So now you can see something that maybe looks more like Hawaii. And then I want to make the pineapple more vibrant. I can go to my adjustment tools, but we didn't get into it today. We're just going to go in and duplicate this layer, the pine layer. Duplicate layer, I'm going to call it pine number 2.
Wait, how did you duplicate layers?
Went to the flyout menu and say duplicate layer. And the top one, I'm going to make it overlay. So you see here, if I turn off the other layers, especially Hawaii and flowers, if I have 2 pineapple layers and the top one is multiply mode, do you see how nicer the pineapple is? Darker. Or maybe you want to make it multiply mode. Do you see how the pineapple is darker? Just play with it. So you can do your own little things there and then play with the blending modes. I can also go to the pineapple and the pine and new group from layers and call it pines. Does that make sense? Now I want to go in and create a frame. So I'm going to bring back the Hawaii. I have the flowers. I might move them around. I kind of want to go in and use that, but maybe I want to go in and create a frame. So I am going to go, and by the way, you see the sky is on top of another color. So if I played with the blending mode of the sky and put it, let's say multiply, look at that. You see all of a sudden it looks a little bit different. Does that make sense? Because what is it reading? It reads basically the color from here. If I go into hard mix, doesn't do anything. So whatever you're gonna do, it's gonna play with the stuff that you have. And then I'm gonna go back to normal and you just see the sky. The last thing I want to do, I'm gonna save it. If it might be too confusing for you for after 2 hours only, but let's say if I wanted to do a frame, I'm gonna go into the bottom one, either the background or the sky. I'm gonna go to image, canvas size. Do you see that? You're gonna get a dialog box. You want to go in and add some stuff so you're going to have some kind of like a frame. I'm going to click on the word relative. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a width 1 inch and the height 1 inch. That it tells you canvas extension over here. Do you see something like this? Do you see something that says canvas extension? It will tell you what the color of the canvas extension is. You can do white. You can do other, you can do black, you can do anything. I'm just doing white. I'm going to click OK. Look what happened. Do you see a white frame? If you want it to be kind of like on a white frame like this, that's fine. It's going to look like a frame and we can leave it like this. And it looks like almost like a Polaroid. Does that make sense? I can even go in and do a drop shadow to the sky and I'm done. But what did I do? I extended the canvas, not image size, canvas size. That's something that you should know about because sometimes you're going to need to do it in order to type something or extend something. Does that make sense? But what if I wanted to make it a different color? I am going to go to my magic wand. Be on the background and click on the extension of the canvas. Do you see that you have marching ants? Do you see that? Does it look like a frame? Yes? With here, do you see a frame?
No.
Did you extend your canvas?
It's not showing. It's showing with the checkered instead.
That's okay.
I don't know why it has
Okay,
this
but
instead.
you have it because you have the images outside, and that's why it just doesn't look exactly. But if you click with the magic wand, it's below this one. Inside.
This one?
Click inside, and that's the magic wand.
Oh, okay.
And if you click only on the checkered, you see the frame?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys see the frame, that's fine. I want to fill the frame with the color. But what's going to happen if I do it right now? What's going to be wrong with it? It's going to go directly on the background and the background's going to have a frame. And then if I want to make it on top, it's not going to really work. It's going to be part of the background. I want the frame to be an independent layer. So while you have this one selected, go to your layers panel and say new layer, empty layer, new layer. Call it frame. Click on the frame layer and put it all the way up to the top, on top of the text. Do you see that? Now you want to fill the frame with the color. Does that make sense? So where is the marching ants now? Where are they? They are inside this layer. Does that make sense? Do edit and fill. And go into color maybe, or any color you want, and then I did that. That's the color that I did. I don't want that, so I'm gonna go edit and fill again, and I'm gonna click color, and I'm gonna choose maybe a blue from here, and click OK and click OK, and you see I have a frame. While it's still selected, I can change the color. I can go even to my bucket and click and change that, or change it to another color and change that. You see that? It's an independent layer. Does that make sense? If I deselect, what do I have? I have a frame layer. I can double click on it. I can even make it in a drop shadow and maybe even a bevel and emboss. And you see I have a frame now. Does that make sense? If I turn off the frame, it still can look like that. So what is the goal and what I'm showing you here? Do you see that everything is layered? Let's say you hate everything you did. Everything can be changed. Hawaii can be changed to Los Angeles. The pineapple can be going and move to something like this. The flowers can be going to the flowers and move them all the way here. The Hawaii can go in and be here. The sky can turn off. You see what I mean? Everything is really adjustable here for you. So if you are in the middle of a job or something and somebody doesn't like it, you really don't have to start from the beginning. You can start bringing all the elements there and start working with it. Does that make sense? I'm gonna do Command Z, but you can go in and see. I can show you if you do a few things. I'm gonna show you a trick. Let's say there's a lot of tricks to show it, but let's say I'm gonna do edit and undo and edit, step backwards and backwards and backwards. I'm going back to everything that I did from before. And then I'm going to go in and fill that with the color. And then I'm going to turn it off. And let's say I have it like this. And I'm saving. What if you're not sure what's going on and you want to show it to yourself? There's a lot of ways to do all kind of things, but one thing is very simple in the beginning is to work with your history panel and kind of make snapshots at what you did. So what does it mean? I want you to go into Window and bring your history panel. You have by default up to probably 50 histories that you have. I'm starting exhausting them a little bit. But look what I'm doing. I'm going to start cheating the machine while I'm working. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to turn off the pineapple, turn off the flowers, the Hawaii, and the frame. I'm just going to have something that looks like that. And I'm going to go to my history panel and I'm going to click on the camera. And that's going to be a snapshot. And I'm going to call that stage 1. And then I'm going to turn on the frame. And then I'm going to go to the flyout menu. Here I can do new snapshot. And I can call that with frame. So you see I already have different things, 1 and 2, to show myself how it works. And then I'm going to add the pine, and I can do another one. And you see I have with pineapple. And then I can add the flowers and do another snapshot. And then I had Hawaii and another snapshot. And then I might get in and make a drop shadow and do another snapshot. So what did I gain here? I saved my file. The history panel does not save. But you can go in and kind of test yourself what you like and what you have there and start moving stuff and looking at different kind of snapshots. So I'm going back to my history. And what can you do with the histories? Each little guy here, let's say this one, can become a document. You can go in and export it as a document and have little stages and save that. Does that make sense? But now I'm going to go in here and see I don't have any more of the history here, but I'm going to go in to this snapshot, and then I'm going to go into the flowers and then move the flowers here and put it here, and guess what? I'm going to do another snapshot. And I'm going to go into my pineapple and move it like this and go in and do another snapshot. So you see what I'm building while I'm still working. It's a dangerous way to do it sometimes, because if you crash, these guys are gone. But basically you can select that, and then each stage you can export it as a image. You can click here and create a new document and save new document. There's more of advanced style to do stuff like this. It's called layer comps. So if we start doing more stuff, of course you're going to start learning that. The last thing we're going to do, let's say the last thing that I have is this one. No, it's this guy. If I wanted to send it to my client as a JPEG, I saved it as a Photoshop file. I can go to File and Export. I have a quick export, either a JPEG or a PNG, but I can also say Export As. And the Export As will take you to a dialog box and tell you I can post it 900 by 900 for social media as a PNG. But maybe I want to go in here and have another one over here, and maybe the same size that I have here, but the next one is going to be a JPEG. So I can have one as a JPEG and one as a social media. So I can go back and forth and play with the stuff that I want to have here, and different kind of sizes. So I can go back here and okay, gonna go in and then I can go back to another one, and then I can do another size and another size. And if I do export all, I'm gonna go back here. I can do a new folder, maybe call it web, and if I click OK, I'm gonna start seeing all the sizes of the files over there. Does that make sense? You can also do like an immediate one, and you also have something that have export legacy. It's the old-fashioned. You can also say to your client, do you want every layer to be an independent file? So you can go and take all the layers and make them into simple files. Good for web designers, because maybe you send them and you want them to code something and they say, can you send me the real assets? So if you click to layers to files, it's going to ask you where do you want to go and put it there, and then what do you want to do it, what kind of file, JPEG, PNG, Targa, or maybe PSD files even. And then you can go in and tell it where to go, and then I'm going to put it in the web and let it run. And guess what? Now your client, you can send this little thing and say, these are the assets I was working on. Would you like to go in and take it and work with it? Does that make sense? So that's going to also give you flexibility when you're working. So I'm going here and look what I have here. These are all the social media. Yes, they are going to be the size of the layer. They're going to be 6 by 6 now, the whole layer. But you see that? I have everything and I can send it to somebody to start working. Even a duplication, you see that? Pineapple? Twice. Why? Because I have it twice. Look how many flowers I have. Because I have, you know, but everything is gonna go, unless if I have, let's say, the same flowers, I could have turned off the layer and it's not gonna take everything. Does that make sense? Any questions? I know it's a lot, but you do have the PDF there and you can go through it, and it gives you a beginning of Photoshop. Do you need more? That's a crash course in doing it fast and that. But make sure, I mean, I don't know if any of you doing the ACA exam, check it out and see if you want to do. We have 10 weeks of Photoshop, 10 weeks in Illustrator, 10 weeks of InDesign, and in the end you do a certificate. So that's kind of cool. We're in the middle of the 6th week of our certificate, but in the fall, just come. How many people are graduating?